Hello, this is Mark Sobowitz with a Clarion Voice. Today we are going to be interviewing author Jamie Tougas, who has a book called Rise and Shine that just recently came out. Thank you very much, Jamie, for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Thank you, Jamie. Now, in the beginning of your book, which I enjoyed very much, by the way, you talk about your journey, your life's journey beginning when you were a young person, and the fact that you were a searcher, that you were searching for something. Somebody said that to you. So what exactly were you searching for?
I was searching for peace. I was searching for a sense of belonging. Back in those days, my world, my inner world was just a turmoil. Anxiety, if you ever known people that walk around with a lot of anxiousness, I couldn't sleep at night. In my mind, I tell people it felt like it was a cement mixer, Mm-hmm. So, but really, what I was looking for was peace. And I found that peace. I found that peace when I heard about Jesus. A friend of mine told me about Jesus, and it was the normal stuff I'd already heard. He's the only begotten Son of God, and he rose from the dead, and things like that. And I didn't really know what was different about hearing it from him compared to other times that I heard it. But what I found was there's a difference about learning about Jesus and learning who Jesus really was, knowing Jesus. Okay. And that's the thing that started to change my life.
Oh, very good. So what caused you to search? I mean, what were you, what prompted all of that? Because you had a pretty good foundation as far as your family. Your mother and father were entrepreneurs and, doing well. So what triggered all that?
Yeah, I've thought about that over the years, and I think a couple things. Obviously, there was a spiritual yearning, as I just said, that it was not satisfied in me. I didn't realize that was driving my search. Mm-hmm. But the other part, honestly, is I think being a searcher is part of my nature. I love to learn stuff. Even today, I like to read books and listen to podcasts, and I've always been someone that likes to learn new things. So I think that's part of my searching nature as well.
Okay. Now, in chapter 8 of your book, we're talking about intimacy with an itch. And the theory of itch is there's 4 components: integrity, transparency, capacity, and hunger. So, what changed, in your life as you dug deeper and used these components as a basis to improve your relationship with God?
Yeah, I just sort of came up with that little acronym because it helped me keep track of certain things that I want to do in my life to grow spiritually. I found out there's a big difference between religion and relationship. And the crux of my spiritual development and growth has to do with the relationship that I get to have with God. Okay. And so there's a part of that that's based on intimacy, or integrity in the sense of wholeness, like a whole number. An integer is a whole number. Mm-hmm. Well, that has to do with becoming whole again. And that was a big part of my life. It's my life story, and that's what I try to share with people now.
Okay, so has your intimacy with God grown as a result of your walk? I mean, have you seen that kind of a development in your relationship?
How much time do we have? That's been my whole life story.
Understood.
It's been fantastic.
Okay. Now, in chapter 9, we're talking about life-altering kind of incidents that trigger, going back, from the old man to the new man and back again. And so in the chapter, you talk about, your wife, Sherry, being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So what kind of trigger did that elicit, when you were encountered with that?
I think all kinds of life events trigger emotions in us. So when I learned that was happening with my ex-wife at the time, there was fear. There was the this anxiety about, well, what do I do? I'm going to be left with my 2 adult children. How do I be a parent for them? What does this mean? And, those type of things. So that was, I think, kind of natural.
How was your faith affected?
I don't think only because of that situation, but other circumstances in my life at the time. That was a shaky period for me. Mm-hmm. That was a shaky period. I'd like to say that I went through it as a champion, and I just, yes, I know God's got a hold of everything. But the reality was that wasn't true for me. I was doing things to kind of manage my own life in the midst of difficult feelings.
Okay, now in chapter 16, which is called Living It Out, in your previous counseling sessions, you've talked about your experiences there. I mean, how do people respond to the fact that you tell them that you need to do things God's way? How do they react when you tell them that?
Actually, I don't tell people they need to do things God's way. What I try to do is live like Jesus. What I try to do is show up with God as my garment and walk in and help people with whatever it is they need. And I found that when people need something, or when they're desperate or hurting, what they really need is someone to be like Jesus for them and with them. And in that process, God is so faithful. He'll show up and he'll bring about a little word or a comment or a question that often just unlocks the doors to healing. And when people get better, they are thankful. So it's really about God showing up.
Okay, if a person did not have a foundation of faith when you counseled them, was their reaction, of rejection? Or, I mean, it depends on the individual person, of course, and what they were dealing with. But what kind of response did you get when you said, listen, you have to, have a relationship with God. You have to mirror that image. I mean, was there a positive response? Was there a negative response? Was there any response?
Yeah, great question. I try not to tell people you have to, have God in your life. What I try to do is, again, love like Jesus would love. But it depends on how you communicate with people, I think. Mm-hmm. To me, it's not about chapter and verse, and it's not about trying to drag somebody off to church or something like that. It's really about meeting people just where they are. I'm no better than anyone else. And my religion is certainly, not something that I wear that elevates me in a place of supremacy in my life. Mm-hmm. I'm just grateful I've been forgiven. Right. So I just try to bring that to the table with people in humility and honesty. And people get to pick what they want to believe. And you have to, I think, honor people's choices all along the way.
You're still doing counseling now, are you not? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm just wondering, based on your growth, your intimacy with God, how has that changed your perspective when you're dealing with people now, when you're counseling them now?
Yeah, I think over the years, the biggest growth place for me has been the ability, and I'm still learning, but it's the ability to disconnect and detach from people's issues. Mm-hmm. I used to take people's problems and concerns and issues in their life, and I'd talk with them about it, and I'd care a lot, and no matter what I'd do, I'd still bring it home with me a little bit.
Okay. Okay.
And now I'd say, for the most part, I realize that's God's job. I'll let Him take care of the people.
Okay.
I just try to be a vessel and be there with them.
Okay. Now, in chapter 18, you talk about a theory called convergence. Now, we're going to get to that in a minute, but what I wanted to ask you, first of all, is what is addictive behavior? Because you talk about that at the beginning of your book, but we've reached this point, where that needs to be addressed, as far as what constitutes addictive behavior.
Addiction's such a ravaging thing in our culture, especially in the Western world in the United States. And, I went to school for some of that stuff and got trained to be a counselor. And the clinical people will tell you it's a three-headed beast, psychosocial and biological. What that means is it has a psychological component, the mental side, the emotional side of things, even our human will. The social piece has to do with, how you were raised and what kind of nurturing environment did you come from, and what's your social life like now. The biological piece is the mental illness piece. And there's this evidence that in the clinical world anyway, that the addiction can be genetic, through our own DNA and so forth.
Right.
So that's what the expert people will tell you. But I'll also tell you that there's a spiritual component. In my view, there's a spiritual foundation to all addiction. And this is really important that people go to this level to get free from addiction.
Okay. Now, for everybody that's watching, define convergence. Tell us what that means to you.
Convergence is this phase in life, usually happening later in life, where our gift mix and our life experience come together for a greater purpose and maximum impact for leadership primarily. But this was developed by a guy by the name of Robert Clinton down at the Fuller Theological Seminary there. And he did this whole study on leaders and leadership. And he studied business people in the marketplace, government leaders, Bible leaders, their lives in the Bible, and also ministry and nonprofit leaders. And he came up with these phases of life that people tend to go through. And he established them, and then he taught that as growth phases for people developing into leadership. Convergence is the kind of final phase when everything, as the word suggests, comes together.
Okay. You talk about finding your sweet spot with God. I really was interested in that. So what does that mean necessarily, the sweet spot? How does that translate to people that are watching?
Yeah, do you ever have things like where normal things in life sometimes take on two meanings for you? So for me, it was like the analogy of golf. I'm not much of a golfer, but I know that there's this thing called the sweet spot when you golf. And when the face of the club hits the ball in the middle. So spiritually, what that means to me is there's a deeper, farther place we can go. The deeper place has to do with surrender and complete, abandonment to Christ. But the farther place has to do with living by faith and taking steps to move forward to do the things that God's given us to do. Excuse me. When we live by faith and activate our lives into faith, it also brings about a deeper relationship with God.
Okay.
So this is the sweet spot.
Okay, gotcha. One final question. What does the future hold for Jamie Tougas?
The short answer is it holds a place of shining for me. It's time for me to shine. And it's not just time for me to shine. I think it's time for a whole bunch of people to shine. And I think that this is the time for me to live my best and brightest life.
Okay.
And to really make an impact with what I'm called to do.
Now, you're planning on doing a course, I believe, of some sort to teach about purpose, right?
Yeah.
Tell people about that.
Great, Mark. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. This is it's kind of a 1-2 punch. The book is my story with some teaching inside of it. But what came about is this curriculum called People on Purpose. And it's so exciting to me because I think the thing that I found about purpose is, we all got a story and stuff we have to work through in our lives. But when we focus on purpose and get intentional about that purpose starts to pull us forward into what you asked about, the area of conversions. So I have a whole course curriculum that I've developed on that, and we're going to start teaching it right here in January at the Hub Ministries and out of the Mire. So I'm excited.
Very good, very good. Okay, well, where can people get Rise and Shine?
I would go to Amazon.com.
Okay. All right. Very good.
That's the best option.
How can people contact you in case they have any further questions?
Sure. My website will be up in just a matter of weeks here, and they can reach me at jamietougas.com. And my name's on the book, Jamie Tougas, TOUGAS.com.
Okay. Very good. One final thing. Talk to people. Tell them what's on your heart. If you had something on your mind that you really want to communicate to somebody that's watching this.
You're not who your past says you are. There's lessons for you in your past, And when you actually courageously go and face those lessons, they will become your stepping stones, your launch pads into the divine purpose God has for your life. As I said before, let your purpose pull you forward. Experiment with surrendering and taking steps by faith, and you're going to see phenomenal things happen in your life. And get around people that love you, and they care about you, and want God's best for your life.
Jamie, thank you very much for being here. Once again, don't forget, this is Rise and Shine, the book that Jamie has produced, and I'm sure you'll enjoy reading it. It's an interesting read, and I wholly recommend that you try to get a copy of that. And you can contact Jamie at jamietougas.com. And be sure to ask your questions of him. And then there will be a course in January, which will be promoted very soon on the Out of the Mire Ministries website. So be looking for that as well. And if you like this video, like and subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell to get future notifications. And this is Mark Sobowitz from the Hub Studios with a Clarion Voice.